I don't know when the rain began. Maybe it was always there, falling behind my thoughts, whispering things I could not understand. They say the world moves forward, but here everything circles back to the same mud, to same faces, to the same empty eyes. I fed the cat because I wanted to be kind, and then I learned what kindness costs. They laughed when I spoke to the sky, but I wasn't praying, I was just asking. Why no one hears to someone who still believes that goodness matters? Now I walk alone. My shoes sink deeper with every step, as if the world itself wants me to stay. Somewhere there must be a place where the world begins again, where time is not a punishment and people don't have to lie to survive. But maybe that place does not exist. Maybe it was only in my mind. Maybe I was the last one who believed that someone would come and no one did. So I will go quietly before the rain learns my name. Somewhere between innocence and silence, between the faint echo of hope and the mud of despair, stands a small Hungarian village, forgotten by time, abandoned by meaning, waiting for a savior who may never come. This is Krasnohorkai's Satan Tango, a novel that does not tell a story as much as it traps you in one. It unfolds not in chapters, but in movements, like the weary rhythm of dance, 6 steps forward and 6 back, returning always to the same place. Because that is what despair does. Published in 1985, Satan Tango was Krasnohorkai's first novel, a bleak masterpiece set in the dying remains of a collective farm, somewhere in post-industrial, post-hope Hungary. The villagers lived half-dead lives. They drink, steal, conspire, and dream of escape, yet are unable to leave the circle of their own ruin. The rain never ends, the mud never dries, and time has lost direction. It loops endlessly, like a snake devouring its own tail. Into this emptiness arrives a man named Rimas, long believed to be dead, a false prophet, a manipulator, a bureaucratic savior who claims he can lead them to a new beginning. And they believe him because when the world collapses, even lies begin to sound like hope. Satan Tango is not a story about events, it's about what remains when all events lose meaning. Krasnohorkai takes us to the smallest possible world, a handful of villages, a ruined settlement, and turns it into a philosophical laboratory for observing how people behave when faith, truth, and future all collapses. Every character becomes a fragment of humanity. Rimas, the manipulator of belief; the villagers, the believers who crave meaning more than truth; the doctor, the passive intellectual watching the world rot; and Stike, the child whose innocence becomes unbearable. Through them, Krasnohorkai asks, what happens when salvation becomes another illusion? What happens when knowledge itself turns into paralysis? Can one still live ethically in a world that has stopped moving forward? The structure of Satan Tango's mirrors the dance in its title. 6 chapters move forward, 6 retrace backward, creating a circular time, a rhythm of repetition and decay. Reading it feels like walking in a storm where every step leads back to the beginning. The sentences are long, sometimes a single paragraph that runs for several pages, creating the feeling that there's no escape, no breath, no pause between thoughts and thoughts and thoughts. This is not a mere style, it's philosophical form, the unbroken sentence as an image of unbroken despair. Beneath its bleakness, the novel is a portrait of post-socialist Hungary, a land abandoned by both ideology and faith. The villagers once believed in the promise of the collective, and now left with nothing. They transfer their faith to any voice that promises salvation. But Krasnohorkai's insight reaches far beyond Hungary. These villages could be us, modern people, exhausted by complexity, longing for clarity, ready to follow anyone who says, "Trust me, I know the way." Because we too live in circles, waiting for change, deceiving ourselves with motion, mistaking repetition for progress. And somewhere, perhaps behind a fogged window, someone like the doctor is still writing it all down, watching the rain fall on the ruins of faith. The rain does not stop in this unnamed Hungarian village. The air itself has begun to decay. Every breath carries the smell of mud and rot, a world long abandoned by promise. The collective farm has collapsed. The villagers are trapped in poverty and delusion, and the only thing that moves is the whisper of a rumor. Rimas is returning. He was thought to be dead, a man whose name carried both dread and fascination. But now he returns, a false prophet draped in the language of renewal. He tells them he has spoken with the government, and their land will be restored, and he will lead them to a new settlement, a place of work, of order, of hope. And the people, desperate, exhausted, aching for meaning, believe him. They sell their cattle, they gather their meager belongings, and they follow him like pilgrim follows a savior. But there is no redemption waiting at the end of this road, only another lie, a cruel tango of manipulation and blind faith. What Krasnohorkai shows us here is not merely the corruption of one man, it's the decay of faith itself. The villagers' tragedy is not that they are deceived, it is that they need to be deceived. For truth, when all hope has died, becomes unbearable. They cling to Rimas not because he is good, but because he offers direction in a world that has none. And isn't that what we too often seek? Some illusion of certainty in a time that feels like endless rain. In another part of the village, an old doctor sits by his window. He drinks, he writes, and he watches the rain. He records every motion of his neighbors, every petty betrayal, every failure of will. He is the mirror of the intellectual world, knowing everything, understanding the futility of all, yet doing nothing. When his notebooks are finally soaked by the rain, we realize that knowledge itself cannot save us from the decay. It only lets us see more clearly. The doctor represents the paralysis of awareness, the moral exhaustion of those who see too much and act too little. And so, even observation becomes a form of complicity. Then there is Tyke, a young girl whose quiet suffering forms the novel's emotional core. She is mocked, beaten, ignored, until one day, in a moment of misguided compassion, she tries to help a cat and ends up killing it. Her guilt becomes unbearable. Her loneliness deepens into madness. In her final act, she seeks redemption in the only way she can imagine, through depth, through silence, and through the erasure of self. Stike's death is a single moment of Satan tango that feels like truth, because it is an act without illusion, and yet even her tragedy disappears into the rhythm of rain. Satan tango is not linear. It begins where it ends, and ends where it begins. Like a dance, 6 steps forward and 6 back, it repeats itself until time dissolves. The circularity is Krasnohorkai's vision of hell, not fire or punishment, but repetition without purpose. Every day is yesterday. Every act becomes meaningless in the moment it is done. The villagers' lives move forward only to collapse again. The emotion is the illusion of progress. It's the same dance we see today, the cycle of work and exhaustion, of promises and disappointments, of elections and disillusionment, of starting over and ending nowhere. That is the tango of modernity. Krasnahorkai does not moralize, he observes. But his observation is devastating that human beings cannot live without faith, even if that faith is false. The truth alone is not enough to sustain life, it must be accompanied by meaning. That power feeds on despair, and the more hopeless people become, the easier they are to control. And that beauty, morality, and salvation may exist, but only in the fleeting moment when someone dares to see clearly before the rain resumes. If Satan Tango feels heavy, it's because it holds up a mirror, not to hungry, but to us. We too live in a world that moves in circles of consumption, of outrage, of false renewal. We too wait for saviors, charismatic figures, new systems, new technologies to lead us out of despair. And like the villagers, we too mistake motion for change, noise for meaning, certainty for truth. The novel asks us to pause, to listen to the rain within our own time, and ask, are we moving forward or just dancing in the same mud, convinced that progress is possible because the music never stops? The villagers follow Rimas to their supposed salvation. The doctor's pen grows still, and Stike is gone. The circle closes, and the rain begins again. But one question remains. In a world of endless repetition, what does redemption mean? The rain never really stops, it only changes its rhythm. A quiet persistence that feels like time itself is breathing. The villagers have left, their houses are empty, their dreams packed away in damp bags. And here, alone, the doctor sits, surrounded by silence, a bottle half empty. His notebooks open like small graves. He reads his own handwriting, the record of all he has seen and failed to prevent, the betrayals, the hunger, the lies, and the child's death. He has written it all, but understands none of it. What was the purpose of observing so carefully if nothing could be changed? In this moment, the doctor becomes the philosopher of futility, the witness to a world where knowledge has no power and compassion has no place to stand. He drinks, he watches the walls, and then he begins to write again. But this time, he no longer describes the world outside. He describes the silence within. He is not just a man. He is consciousness itself, the human mind trapped within the endless repetition of the real. He sees too much, thinks too clearly, and thus can no longer live simply. His paralysis is the price of awareness, and this is one of Krasnahorkai's most devastating insights. That the more we understand the chaos of the world, the less capable we become of acting within it. Knowledge without illusion becomes despair, and yet within that despair lies a strange kind of dignity. For to keep observing, to keep writing, even as meaning collapses, that too is a form of faith. A faith not in God, nor in redemption, but in the fragile persistence of seeing. In Satan Tango, time moves like a dying animal. It crawls, halts, begins again. The book itself loops back on its opening. The ending folds into the beginning, as if existence itself were a trap that no one can leave. The circularity is not merely a narrative technique, it is metaphysical heart of the novel. It tells us that the world does not progress, it decays, it repeats, it dreams of salvation and returns to the mud. But within that repetition, something subtle glimmers, the faint awareness that we are watching ourselves dance. that moment of awareness, that quiet realization that this has all happened before, is the novel's form of transcendence. The moral of Satan Tango lies not in good and evil, but in endurance. The villagers endure illusion, Stike endures suffering, the doctor endures consciousness. Each in their own way reveals a facet of human condition. We live not because life is kind, but because we cannot stop living. Even in despair, the will to continue persists, stubborn, absurd, like a candle burning in a storm. Krasnahorkai's vision is bleak, yes, but beneath it flows a deep compassion. He does not mock his characters, he mourns them. He sees in them a reflection of us, the lost, the yearning, the disappointed, all still searching for one pure note of truth in the discord of the world. Look around today, the screens, the noise, the constant rush. We move endlessly, yet feel trapped in the same cycle of fatigue and fear. Every year promises renewal, new leaders, new ideologies, new technology, yet somehow the same emptiness returns. Krasnahorkai's reign is our algorithmic scroll. Rimas is false prophet who sells meaning to the exhausted, and his doctor, that's us, watching, recording, believing that reflection alone can redeem the ruins. But perhaps the lesson of Satan Tango is that reflection is not enough, that we must risk action, even if the world mocks it, even if it changes nothing. Because even if salvation is impossible, compassion is not. And that, in a world that loops endlessly, is the only true rebellion. The world outside is silent now. I think of the girl, of the villagers, of Rimas, and of myself. I can no longer tell you who deceived whom. The rain falls within the same patience as the first day I began writing. I will write again, not to understand, but so that the silence does not devour me. And thus, the dance ends where it began. The village dissolves, the rain resumes, and the doctor writes. And we, the listeners, remain, bearing witness to the echo of a world that mirrors our own. Satan Tango is not a story about Hungary, but about the human condition, about the dark grace that binds us to each other, even in June. Krasnahorkai's prose, long spiraling endless, is the prose of existence itself. No punctuation between hope and despair, no full stop between life and death. It reminds us that in the longest night of meaninglessness, there still flickers the fragile light of endurance, the small act of continuing even when all else has failed. Somewhere, a girl still reaches out to touch the rain. Somewhere, an old man still writes in the dark. Somewhere, the dance begins again. And if you listen closely, beneath the sound of your own heartbeat, you'll hear the quiet rhythm of Satan Tango, the eternal, tragic, beautiful music of human being. In the end, Satan Tango is not merely a story of a dying village. It is the anatomy of dependency, of souls leaning on other souls when the ground beneath them begins to crumble. The villagers clung to Rimas not because he was divine, but because they feared the vastness of a world without direction. And isn't that what we all do in quieter ways? We trade our doubts for certainty, our solitude for belonging, our freedom for the illusion of being led somewhere meaningful. The novel whispers that despair is not only the absence of hope, it is the surrender of our capacity to think, to choose, to feel for ourselves. When we let another voice define our purpose, we become echoes in someone else's dream. Yet, amidst the decay and dust, there remains a fragile truth that even the lost are capable of light, that meaning does not descend upon us like grace. It must be carved slowly from the silence we fear to enter. Perhaps that is why Satan Tango ends not with revelation, but with a kind of sacred emptiness. A reminder that understanding is not given, it is endured. So, this brings me to the end of this series, a long winding journey through the shadowed corridors of Laszlo Krasznahorkai's world, through silence and chaos, through despair and transcendence. We have met his wanderers, each searching for meaning in a world that resists it. And perhaps that is what his writings leaves us with, not comfort but awakening, that even in ruins there is rhythm, that even in loss there is language, that endurance, quiet trembling, human endurance, is itself a form of grace. Krasznahorkai does not promise salvation, he simply asks us to keep walking, to look at the world's unbearable beauty and unbearable sorrow, and still somehow stay. As I close this series, I think of his words that the end of all stories is not silence, but a fragile hum of existence, continuing anyway. Thank you for walking this path with me, through the long sentences, the slow unravelings, and the infinite patience his world demands. Because somewhere in those pages, between despair and devotion, we found not just his truth, but perhaps a reflection of our own.